Trump might visit China before attending APEC summit. Russia states readiness to move towards peace with Ukraine. Good afternoon and salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for tuning in. You're watching World Today. I'm Otto Othman. Gaza's Civil Defense Agency reveals that Israeli forces opened fire on crowds of Palestinians trying to collect humanitarian aid in the war-torn Palestinian territory on Sunday, killing at least 93 people and wounding dozens more. Now, 80 were killed as truckloads of aid arrived in the north, while 9 others were reported shot near an aid point close to Rafah in the south, where dozens of people lost their lives just 24 hours earlier. 4 were killed near another aid site in Khan Yunis, also in the south. The UN World Food Programme said its 25 truck convoy carrying food and encountered massive crowds of hungry civilians which came under gunfire near Gaza City soon after it crossed from Israel and cleared checkpoints. Deaths of civilians seeking aid have become a regular occurrence in Gaza, with the authorities blaming Israeli fire as crowds facing chronic shortages of food and other essentials flock in huge numbers to aid centers. The UN said earlier this month that nearly 800 aid seekers had been killed since late May, including on the routes of aid convoys. Gaza's health ministry said the 18 people have died of starvation in Gaza in the last 24 hours as Israel's blockade on the enclave continues. The Palestinian death toll in the Gaza Strip has risen to 58,895, with 140,980 injured since the conflict between Hamas and Israel erupted in 2023. Now, according to a statement by Gaza's health authorities on Sunday, Israeli military operation in the enclave have claimed 130 lives and injured another 495 in the past 24 hours alone. Now, furthermore, the health authorities said from Sunday earlier morning to night, 132 Palestinians in Gaza were killed by Israeli forces, including 94 who were attacked in multiple and disruption sites or in the surrounding areas. Now, in particular, the death toll from Israeli shooting on crowd at an aid distribution site in the northwestern part of Gaza City on Sunday has reached 81. They also said that since 27th May, when the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, backed by the United States and Israeli, started to take charge of aid distribution, 995 Gazans were killed by Israeli soldiers while trying to receive aid. Now, the Gaza health authorities added that 6,011 were also injured and 45 others were missing. United States President Donald Trump might visit China before going to the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit between 30th October and 1st November. Now, alternatively, he might engage with Chinese leader Xi Jinping during the APEC event in South Korea, as reported by the South China Morning Post. Now, the two countries have been trying to negotiate an end to an escalating tit-for-tat tariff war that has upended global trade and supply chains. The two sides have discussed a potential meeting between the leaders in the region this year, but they have not confirmed a date or location yet. Trump has sought to impose tariffs on U.S. importers for virtually all foreign goods, which he says will stimulate domestic manufacturing and which critics say will make many consumer goods more expensive for Americans. He has called for a universal base tariff rate of 10% on goods imported from all countries, with high rates for imports from the most problematic ones, including China. Imports from there now have the highest tariff rate of 55%. Trump has set a deadline of 12 August for the U.S. and China to reach a durable tariff agreement. However, a spokesperson for Trump did not respond to a request for comment about the reported plans for a meeting with Xi in the autumn. United States President Donald Trump said that he would help Afghans detained in the United Arab Emirates for years after fleeing their country when its Taliban leaders extended control over it. Now, in a post on Truth Social that linked to an article on the Afghans, Trump stated he will try to save them starting right now. Trump, a Republican who promised a far-reaching immigration crackdown, suspended refuge resettlement after he took office in January. In April, the Trump administration terminated temporary deportation protection for thousands of Afghans in the U.S. Trump cited news website Just the News as saying that UAE officials were preparing to hand over some Afghan refugees to the Taliban. However, the State Department did not immediately respond to the request for comment. The UAE, a close security partner of the United States, agreed in 2021 to temporarily house several thousand Afghans evacuated from Kabul as the Taliban ousted the U.S.-backed government during the final stages of the U.S.-led withdrawal. Nearly 200,000 Afghans have been brought to the U.S. by former President Joe Biden's administration since the chaotic U.S. troop withdrawal from Kabul. Russian President Vladimir Putin is ready to move toward a peace settlement for Ukraine, but Moscow's main objective is to achieve its goals. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated that the world has become accustomed to U.S. President Donald Trump's occasionally harsh rhetoric. However, he emphasized that Trump has had also highlighted in his remarks regarding Russia that he would persist in seeking a peace agreement.
Все привыкли, так сказать, к его достаточно жесткой и прямолинейной риторике. Вместе с тем он подтверждает свои намерения дальше делать все возможное для того, чтобы способствовать мирному регулированию. Собственно, президент Путин неоднократно говорил о своем желании как можно быстрее перевести украинское регулирование в мирное русло. Это длительный процесс, он требует усилий, и он непрост. И, скорее всего, в Вашингтоне все больше и больше это понимают.
Previously, Trump announced a tougher stance on Russia, pledging a new wave of military aid to Ukraine, including Patriot missile defense systems. He also gave Russia a 50-day deadline to agree to a ceasefire or face additional sanctions. Coming up next, Ishiba laments harsh election results as upper house control slips.
Mentol jimat tenaga untuk lebih jimat.
Indonesia will begin cloud seeding operations today to combat worsening forest and land fires in Riau province. National Disaster Mitigation Agency spokesperson Abdul Mukhari said the operation would run for at least 7 days and could be extended depending on the conditions in the field. Now, the Cessna aircraft is scheduled to depart from Pondok Cabe Airport in Banten province, and cloud seeding operations will be carried out using sodium chloride to induce rainfall over areas affected by the fires. Data from the Meteorology, Climatology and Geophysics Agency showed 1,208 fire hotspots across Sumatra as of Sunday, including 586 in Riau, and indicated that the resulting haze had reached parts of Malaysia. Haze has caused the air quality in Riau to worsen, but overall, it has not disrupted people's lives in other areas of the province. A joint ground task force involving disaster officials and military, police, fire brigades, and volunteers is also being mobilized. Indonesian rescuers evacuate survivors after a ferry catches fire, killing at least 5 people, while more than 200 others were saved, with many jumping overboard to flee the huge blaze. Maritime security agencies said the KM Barcelona 5 ferry was engulfed in flames off the coast of Sulawesi Island, Indonesia, just weeks after at least 19 people were killed when a ferry sank off the popular resort island of Bali. Now, the fire broke out at the ferry's stern as it was on its way to Manado, the capital North Sulawesi province, with some passengers jumping overboard with the life jackets. Fishermen also helped evacuate the victims to nearby islands, and those injured were taken to the nearest health facility. The accident happened about 1 hour away from the resort town of Likupang. Marine accidents are a regular occurrence in the Southeast Asian archipelago of around 17,000 islands, in part due to lax safety standards or bad weather. The ferry sinking en route to Bali this month was attributed to bad weather. In March, a boat carrying 16 people capsized in rough seas or rough water off Bali, killing an Australian woman and injuring at least one other person. In 2018, more than 150 people drowned when a ferry sank in one of the world's deepest lakes on Sumatra Island. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba expressed his intention to stay in the job on Sunday as exit polls showed poor results for his ruling Liberal Democratic Party LDP, which was projected to lose the upper house majority at Sunday's election. Now, speaking 2 hours after polls closed to public broadcaster NHK, Ishiba said they solemnly accepted the harsh result. Ishiba also said his country was engaged in extremely critical tariff negotiations with the United States. Japan, the world's fourth largest economy, faces a deadline of 1st August to strike a trade deal with the United States or face punishing tariffs in its largest export market. While the ballot does not directly determine whether Ishiba's minority government falls, it heaps pressure on the embattled leader, who also lost control of the more powerful lower house in October. The LDP and coalition partner Komeito needed 50 seats to retain control of the 248-seat upper chamber in an election where half of the seats were up for grabs. The exit poll by public broadcaster NHK showed they are forecast to secure 32 to 51 seats. If the coalition holds less than 46 seats, it would mark its worst result once or since the coalition was formed in 1999. Rains from Typhoon Wipa pounded Hong Kong on Sunday as the storm skirted southwards before making landfall on the coast of China's Guangdong province. Now, the storm left Hong Kong with fallen trees and damaged scaffolding and forced over 200 people to seek refuge in temporary shelters. Now, Hong Kong's weather authorities downgraded the typhoon warning to a strong wind signal. Compared to previous typhoons like Mangkhut and Hato, which caused much more astonishing destruction, the impact this time was primarily limited to fallen trees and collapsed scaffolding. As the storm passed Hong Kong, more than 4 inches of rain fell within 3 hours in some areas. In a statement, the government said 26 people sought treatment in public hospitals during the typhoon, while 253 flocked to its shelters and 471 fallen trees were reported. At least 9 people were killed on Sunday in western Ecuador after a pickup truck and an SUV collided head-on. Authorities said 2 others were injured in the accident, which occurred on the highway connecting the coastal city of Manta and the nearby town of Montecristi, renowned for its Panama hat production. Juan Carlos Martillo, an investigator with the Ecuadorian Traffic Commission, said the authorities suspected that the accident was caused by a lane infringement. Now, according to a local media, 2 children aged 6 and 11 were among the dead. Martillo said that given the number of victims, it is pressured that at least one of the vehicles was carrying an excessive number of passengers. Traffic accidents are among the leading causes of death in Ecuador. Official refugees show that between January and May 2025 alone, there were 4,756 traffic accidents, with 565 fatalities in the South American nation. There were around 2,300 traffic-related fatalities last year, with over a third attributed to driver inexperience or recklessness. The The recent trip of Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to China shows that he attaches great importance to the development of bilateral ties with China, as the two countries are now in a resilient relationship amid political challenges. Chinese President Xi Jinping had earlier met with Albanese in Beijing on Tuesday. President Xi said that China-Australia relations have emerged from their low point and achieved a turnaround in recent years, bringing tangible benefits to the people of both countries. Describing the meeting as very constructive, Albanese said China's development is of vital importance to Australia, emphasizing that Australia does not seek economic decoupling from China and is willing to maintain smooth bilateral trade to advance practical cooperation in areas such as green industry, climate change response, and medical technology to achieve mutually beneficial outcomes. Now, during his visit, China and Australia signed a number of cooperation documents covering trade, customs, inspections, and over quarantine of agriculture, tourism, among others. The Ecuadorian government on Sunday extradited notorious drug trafficker Adolfo Macias, alias Fito, to the United States a month after he was recaptured following a 2024 escape from a maximum security penitentiary. Now, the U.S. Attorney Office filed charges in April against Macias, the head of the Los Choneros gang, on suspicion of cocaine distribution, conspiracy, and firearms violations, including weapons smuggling. The drug lord on Sunday was removed from custody at a maximum security prison in Ecuador's southwest for the purpose that correspond to the extradition process. Macias, the former taxi driver turned crime boss, agreed in a Quito court last week to be extradited to the United States to face the charges. Now, he is the first Ecuadorian extradited by his country since a new measure was written into law last year after a referendum in which President Daniel Noboa sought the approval of moves to boost his war on criminal gangs. Ecuador, once a peaceful haven between the world's two top cocaine exporters, Colombia and Peru, has seen violence erupt in recent years as enemy gangs with ties to Mexican and Colombian cartels vie for control. Still to come in our sports segment, Adin Indraki Bhatia wins 8 professional squash titles in Australia.
Bersihkan penapis penghawa dingin dan tetapkan 24 darjah Celsius untuk lebih jimat.
Zifei and Nur Izzuddin Rumsani failed to defend their Japan Open title after losing to top South Korean pair Kim Won-ho and Seo Seung-ji in the final yesterday. Zifei and Izzuddin found it hard to cope with the powerful world number 3 Koreans and suffered a 14-21, 17-21 defeat in a match lasting 37 minutes at the Metropolitan Gymnasium in Tokyo. Zifei and Izzuddin won $33,250 as runners-up, while the winners pocketed $70,300 in the World Tour Super 750 event. Won-ho and Seo-ji won now twice in their 3 encounters against Zifei and Izzuddin. Zifei acknowledged their opponent's dominance, describing them as being faster and decisive, while Nur Izzuddin remained optimistic, vowing to improve in future tournaments. The defeat came as a second disappointment of the day for Malaysia after women's doubles pair Pearly Tan and M. Tina lost to top Chinese pair Liu Shengshu and Tan Ning in the final, also in straight games. Now Zifei and Izzuddin, who won 4 World Tour titles last year, have only won once this season after clinching the India Open crown, another Super 750 event in January. Meanwhile, women's doubles shuttlers Pearly Tan and M. Tina's hopes of capturing the Japan Open title were dashed after losing to China's world number 1 pair Liu Shengshu and Tan Ning. Pearly and Tina found the Chinese pair challenging and lost 15-21, 14-21. It was the world number 3 duo's second defeat to Shengshu and Tan Ning in a final this year, following their run-up finish to the same pair in the Indonesian Open title match in Jakarta last month. Now, despite missing out on the title, it was still an encouraging outing for Pearly and Tina, who reached their 4th final this year. The duo triumphed in the Thailand Open in May and finished runners-up in the Indonesian Masters in January, adding to their achievements in the Indonesian Open and Japan Open. Pearly and Tina will now turn their attention to the China Open, which starts on Tuesday in Chengdu. National men's squash player Muhammad Adin Idraki Bikhtiar won his 8th Professional Squash Association PSA Tour Series title after emerging champion of the Victorian Open in Australia. The Squash Racket Association of Malaysia announced that the 31-year-old player defeated compatriot Nathan Quay in 11-2, 11-4, 8-11, 11-3 in 46 minutes. Commenting after the match, Adin said he was happy and proud with himself and his performance for the entire week, especially after winning back-to-back tournaments. Adin said he also gradually regained his confidence after being out of a few months due to shoulder injury. It is Adin's 8th PSA title after winning the Morrinsville Open in New Zealand last week. U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to interfere with a deal to build a new football stadium in Washington unless the local NFL team, now known as the Commanders, changes its name back to Redskins. The American football team dropped the name Redskins in 2020 after decades of criticism that was a racial slur with links to the U.S. genocide of the indigenous population. The team moved from Washington to suburban Landover, Maryland in 1997, but earlier this year reached an agreement with the local District of Columbia government to return to the city with a new stadium expected to open in 2030. Trump has limited authority to intervene under the current home rule law governing federal oversight of the District of Columbia, but he has raised the prospect of taking more control. Marc Marquez became the first Ducati rider to win 5 main races in a row with victory at the Czech Grand Prix on Sunday, widening his championship lead over brother Alex Marquez, who crashed out during the second lap after contact with Honda's Juan Mir. Now, 2-time champion Francesco Bagnaia could not capitalize on his first pole position of the season, losing the lead to Aprilia's Mark Bezzecchi after a slip towards the end of the first lap before settling for 4th in the 12th round of the season. Bagnaia's teammate Mark, who also won the sprint on Saturday, took the lead from Bezzecchi during lap 8 and left the Italian 1.753 seconds behind the register, a statement 8th race in the campaign. Now, reigning champion Jorge Martin, who has missed 10 rounds due to injury setbacks, marked his comeback by completing his first race of the year, finishing 7th. Now, in Moto2, American Racing's Joe Roberts won the race ahead of Frantic Racing's Barry Baltus and Liqui-Moly's Manuel Gonzalez, the championship leader. In Moto3, Red Bull KTM's Jose Antonio Ruda won the race to extend his championship lead to 85 points, finishing ahead of CF Moto's Maximo Quiles and Liqui-Moly's David Munoz. Sweden's Oliver Solberg claimed a stunning maiden World Rally Championship WRC victory at Rally Estonia on Sunday, nearly 20 years after his father Peter Solberg won the last of his 13 WRC races. The win marked Toyota's 100th in the WRC. Now, Solberg extended his lead with composure to seal a 25.2-second win over home favorite and 2019 world champion Ott Tänak, and the Estonian's Hyundai teammate Terry Neufeld finished third. The 23-year-old got off to a flying start, winning Friday's opening stage and taking a lead he did not relinquish all weekend. He carried a 21.1-second overnight lead into Sunday's final three stages, where he emerged untroubled by the tricky grip in slick, damp conditions. Hyundai's Tänak battled inconsistent grip, and Neville, who started the day 4 seconds behind, was handed a 10-second penalty for a false start on special stage 18 and finished 23.1 seconds back in third. However, Tänak snatched the championship lead from Toyota's Elfyn Evans by a single point, with Britain managing a sixth-place finish in Estonia. Toyota, who have won very early rally so far this year, except for Greece, also tightened their grip on the manufacturer's race with 399 points to Hyundai's 347. Now on cycling, Team Wellens overpowered his breakaway companions in brutal fashion to claim victory on stage 15 of the Tour de France on Sunday, offering yet another sign, if one was needed, of UAE team Emirates XRG's iron grip on the race. Now, the Belgian national champion, one of defending champion and overall leader Tadej Pogacar's domestics, jumped away from a leading group of 6, some 43 kilometers from the finish, and never looked back, beating compatriot Victor Compenetres by 1 minute 28 seconds. France's Julien Alaphilippe took third place, 9 seconds further back. Wellens master Pogacar still leads Denmark's Johannes Vingegaard by 4 minutes and 13 seconds in the overall standings, edging 169.3 kilometers closer to a fourth Tour title after a hilly ride between Moret and Carcassonne. Now, German Florian Lipowitz sits in third place. Now, the top guns stayed quiet all day as Pogacar slowing down after Lipowitz and Vingegaard were caught up behind an early crash. The 34-year-old Wellens secured his maiden Tour de France win to complete his Grand Tour stage victory collection after prevailing in the Giro d'Italia in 2016 and 2018 and in the Vuelta a España in 2020. Monday is a rest day on the Tour de France in Montpellier.
Elektrik 5 bintang memberikan perkhidmatan 5 bintang.
Now that wraps up World Today this time round. In our top story, Trump might visit China before attending APEC summit. Now for business news updates, do join us tonight at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 or saluran Berita RTM. Till then, I'm Otto Othman, Malaysia Madani, Rakyat Disantuni. Thanks for watching.